And good morning to you, my super friends. Thanks for coming along. The chat has been busy already. Lots and lots of people chatting. So, who's here? Lots of people. Sion, Scott, Michael, Johnny, Gil, Frank, Mike. Chip is here, hiding under the name Longflare. Peter and Dodgy, Intermittent. Lots of people are here. And I probably missed a couple. Some Call It Fun is here. So, just before I get into the live stream, instead of doing the acknowledgement of country today, I'm just going to do a quick shout out to, once again, now I've mentioned this one before. This is Corey Tutt's initiative, Deadly Science, which is a program for providing science education to Aboriginal communities. And basically what they do is provide a whole lot of content and materials and training for teachers and things, and provide lots of resources that help with STEM education in Aboriginal communities around Australia. And I have mentioned them before, but I was just reminded of them this week because Corey was tweeting about postage issues, which is something that I've been complaining about just in general on live streams and Twitter and Facebook for a long time. And it reminded me of the really cool things that he's doing with Deadly Science. So if you do happen to feel like supporting Corey's initiative, there is a shop and there is a donate thing here. And that is Deadly. In fact, I'm going to drop that in the chat, because STEM education is important, and that is a really cool initiative. Now, where were we? Okay, back to here. Hopefully this live stream is working okay. I spent quite a while this morning with the ATEM Mini Pro trying to get that set up so that I could use that for the encoding, and I didn't quite have it all sorted in time, so I'm doing it the old style way at the moment using OBS, just directly streaming from OBS. What I did was ran a display link adapter from my computer and then fed that in as a camera input into the ATEM, and it was kind of working almost. It worked if I had the microphone plugged into the ATEM. What finally tripped me up was I couldn't get the preview working, and I couldn't get the audio pass-through working. But I'll get there. I'm going to keep working on that because it does look like it's worth working on. So, day in DIY in the ghetto. G'day, Chris. Good morning. Now, all right. I started the day today with no idea what topic I was going to talk about, and then an idea came to me. Well, I can't claim credit for it. So during the week, Naomi Wu, who I'm sure many of you already know, put me in touch with someone. Now, I'm going to be very careful about what I say here because I don't want to reveal anything that that might be personal or identifying or anything like that. So I'm going to talk about this in very general terms, and it's something that I think is really relevant, and that's why I thought I'll bring this up on this live stream, because it's something that is actually relevant in home automation, and also particularly in the application of home automation to assistive technology. And I think it's worth doing. So this topic, the squirrel that we're going to start with today, was inspired by an inquiry, and we can talk around the subject and see what we can come up with. So the scenario is, well, the question is in relation to home automation dashboards and being able to control the physical environment from something like a touchscreen. Like, say you've got a tablet and you want to be able to control the world around you from it. What sort of software stack and what sort of system do you use to do that? And Dana's here. G'day, Dana. Jason. So, so the particular scenario, now we can talk about this in general context. What I really like about this subject is that it is really the core of the intersection of home automation and assistive technology. And for me personally, I think that one of the most interesting applications of home automation is when it does cross over into assistive technology. So when it can be used by people who have problems with mobility or whatever, all sorts of reasons that people might need to use assistance to do everyday things. Daniel, morning from the EU. When you say morning, it's probably like ridiculously early morning, like just after midnight is my guess. Okay, a scenario. Scenario could be, for example, someone who uses a wheelchair for mobility, and so has difficulty reaching things physically because it's just harder to move around when you're in a wheelchair. And there are many things that you might want to do, like controlling lights. And I just realized I better mute my she who shall not be named in case I say things that activate it. You might want to do things like open and close blinds, or change settings on heating, or all of the normal sorts of things that you do in a domestic environment. And you want to be able to do that from something like a control system or a touch interface that is could be mounted on a wheelchair, for example, or in a general situation, it might be something like a tablet mounted on a wall. So you just go up to the tablet and use the control panel. So the question is, 2 a.m. 2 a.m. Scott said, imagine me doing a Hibbit routine over Home Assistant. No. Only Paul can do the Hibbit routine. I am not even going to attempt anything like that unless I get really excited about Zigbee. Yeah, Michael, there's two 2 o'clocks. There is one in the daytime, and there is one that's not in the daytime. Which I've seen the one not in the daytime too many times. All right, so Chris brought up a side question about the Shelly, and that is a really good one, but I'm going to defer that question for a little bit. So that's in relation to the live stream a couple of weeks ago with the Shelly Pro 4 PM and the video that I put up whenever it was during the week. So I did a video about the Shelly Pro 4 PM. But that's probably enough of a subject that it's like a thing in itself. So maybe we'll talk about that a bit later in the live stream. All right. Yeah. And there's only 2 o'clocks if you're using that 12-hour clock. The one that is not unambiguous. All right. So, I was just going to say, okay, so what, sorry, that beep, you would have heard a beep come through then. I'm just going to turn something off so it doesn't do it again. Use the force, Linus, yes. Andy just reminded me of an LCA 2011 talk I did on home automation. So LCA is linux.conf.au, it was a Linux conference, so I did a talk, and of course all talk titles have to be kind of jokey / puns, so I called it Use the Force Linus, and the subtitle was The Best User Interface is No User Interface. And the whole idea being that, alright, so this is an interesting little squirrel deviation. The whole question of home automation that isn't really automation, that is just a big remote control toy. And this is something that Andy has said to me many times, which is probably why he's bringing this up now. The end goal should be that your physical environment anticipates your needs and changes accordingly. A really, really simple example is lighting. When you come into a room, if the lights come on and then you leave the room and the lights turn off, then you have achieved the goal of being able to see. You haven't had to interact with anything. The environment has simply adapted to your needs. And then of course there are higher level commands that you might want. So you might be sitting still in front of the TV and you want the lights to go out because you're watching a movie. But so in that situation you're sitting still, and if it doesn't detect motion then it's okay, the lights can go out. But you could be sitting at your desk working and sitting still and you want the lights to stay on, even though it can't detect that you're moving anymore. So your presence or absence is not necessarily enough for the system to know whether the light should be on or not. And what I should do is get Andy on as a guest sometime, and maybe he can talk about a very big home automation project he worked on quite some years ago, where the homeowner gave them the stipulation that there were to be no light switches in the entire house, and with the idea being exactly what I'm talking about. The environment should adapt to you, lights should turn on when you need them and turn off when you don't need them. And the frustrations and the things that went wrong as a result of that, anyway, I'm not the person to talk about it. Andy's the one that felt all the pain and worked on that project for years and years. So yeah, I really should get Andy on the live stream someday. Yes. Okay, so now Scott just brought up a very interesting point, which is that I was thinking about a dashboard. So this is getting slightly back on track. I was thinking about a dashboard in the context of a touch screen that you interact with by using your hands, but voice control is also a very useful and powerful way to do it, and I use it all the time. So as you've seen, I use voice control here to turn on my soldering iron and turn it off again, and things like the lights so the 3D printer that you can see up there in the enclosure, the lighting for that is voice controlled, and so is the lighting in the room, the blinds, like all sorts of things. Yeah, so so Scott said the important ones go on when I say I'm not going to use the word because I'm not going to wake up the thing. Yes, I need a beer, and what can I do about it? Oh yeah, yes, Michael. If I turn off the what? Yeah, I actually have these monitors. Yes, so these monitors are on a Sonoff S26, I think it is, one of many like little power control devices. So all the monitors on my computer and the big TV, which I use for the IP cameras that are around the outside of the house, that is all controlled. That is all voice controlled as well. And I can give I also have an overall command, which is I can tell she who shall not be named to turn off the lab, and everything gets turned off. Turns off soldering irons, monitors, lights, closes the blind, turns off the 3D printer light, and all those sorts of things. So you can type things together in macros. All right, so let's kind of ignore the whole issue of remote control toy versus truly autonomous system. Now, ideally, ideally what we want is for the environment to simply react to us. Now, actually, I will go on a slight tangent. I will use the exact example that I used in that conference talk back in 2011, so 10 years ago. Oh, Andy's just posted the link to the talk. So everybody is going to go click on that link now and go and watch that and not watch the live stream. Maybe. Or you can watch it later. Or not watch it at all. I wonder what I looked like 10 years ago. Alright, so the example I used in that talk, the concept is doors and the purpose of door locks. What you need to do is think back to not what something is necessarily, but the reason it exists in the first place. And so what often happens is you end up focusing on the thing and not the reason for the thing. And in the case of door locks, the reason they are there is to allow you to pass through the door and to not allow other people to pass through the door. And that's the objective. That's what you're trying to achieve by having the lock in the first place. And so if you want to make the user interface for something disappear entirely, what you need to do is make the behavior of that thing correct without you consciously having to control it or change it. So stripping back all of the things that are used to make it happen. In the case of a door, forget that there's a door lock. Ultimately, what you want to happen is when you walk up to the door and grab the door handle and turn it, you can turn it and you can walk in. If someone who isn't allowed to go in walks up, grabs the door handle, they can't turn it or they can't push the door, they can't open it. So what you're wanting to do is have the door be accessible, open for you and not open for other people. And a lock is simply how you achieve that. So if you can get all the way back to what your original goal is, why is that device there in the first place? What is it trying to achieve? And think about how to make that as transparent as possible. And this was the example where Scott says, next thing you know, he's going to go bald. One day, it'll happen one day. Yeah, I'll lose all my hair. I'm still waiting for that day. So this was in this I was talking about RFID implants and the idea that the fact that we have to carry keys is that we are carrying a user interface element with us all the time. So we walk up to a lock, we have part of the user interface element with us, we have to carry that everywhere. And so you have to put the key in the lock and you unlock the door and then you go in. And then maybe you forget to lock it again once you've gone through, maybe you don't. So there are all these sorts of things. And the example I was using was having an RFID chip implanted in your hand, and it could be done by other things. So it could be done by fingerprint scanning or whatever the technology is, it doesn't really matter, but I was using the example of an RFID chip. If you have an RFID reader in the door handle or on a plate on the door or something, you can walk up, grab the door handle, it scans the RFID tag, unlocks, and by the time you turn the handle, the door is unlocked and you can walk through. Someone else walks up, they don't have the chip that's authorized, they grab the door handle and it doesn't lock. So the point I'm making here is that the interaction with the object should be totally transparent. It shouldn't be a matter of consciously deciding, I'm going to change the state of that thing. And yeah, so there was Michael's comment, until someone cuts your hand off to break into your house. I heard that one many, many times. So when I did this implant, which was, I think it was about 14 years ago, it was a little while ago now, it was, at the time, it was kind of an unusual thing. Not very many people had done it. And so I got very accustomed to all of the standard reactions. A lot of the reactions was, you are a harbinger of the devil and the Antichrist is working through you. This is the end of days coming. So And one of them was, oh, people are going to cut your arm off in order to break into your house. I heard that one so many times. Yeah, if someone's willing to cut your arm off, having a key versus having an RFID chip is a very small problem to worry about. Right. Yeah. Yes, acting under duress is a problem. So Andy says, doesn't have to be as extreme as that, but acting under duress is a problem. And the fact is that I can't be separated from the key. So if someone came up to me and stuck a knife in my face and said, give me your house key, I can hand them the house key, they can go, and the threat is then removed from me personally, although it might be applied to my family. But if they come up to me and say, give me your house key, and it's physically inside me, I have to go with them in order to unlock the door. Anyway, and Scott, yes, you can. You can get RFID chips, NFC chips, etc. in silicon rings, and you can get them in metal rings and things as well. I am deviating off this topic, but this is giving you thinking time. So what I want you to be thinking about is what dashboard systems you use and what you like and don't like about them, because we're going to get back to that. That is actually the point of all of this. Yeah, so Celtic B says, I saw an episode of CSI where the exotic dancers in a club all were chipped for keeping track of payments. Yeah, there were all sorts of fanciful things. I saw an episode of some cop show. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like might have been CSI or... CSI is a stupid show anyway. It's so bad. There's, I think it might have been a Law and Order, like an SVU, Law and Order SVU or something. And in this particular thing, a guy had implanted an RFID chip in, I think it was in his girlfriend's shoulder, and he was using it so that he could track her everywhere she went, which of course is absolute garbage. They don't work like that. But that's the sort of thing that gets written into TV shows, and then people see the TV show and think, oh no, RFID chips are going to allow us to be tracked. No, it doesn't work. Yes, Stephen says, rather than RFID, you could use your phone connecting to your Wi-Fi or a BLE beacon. Yes, that is true. So the phone itself can be a token, like having, as someone else mentioned earlier, with modern cars, where you just have to have the key in your pocket. As you come up to the car, it's unlocked. You walk away from the car and it's locked. That is exactly the sort of interaction I'm talking about. It's where the user interface disappears and you interact with the object as you would expect to. All right. So, 10 years, Scott says, getting old. Yes, I know. I am old. I am old. I'm old enough that I qualified for moderately early access to the COVID vaccine, but let's not get into that subject. Now, yeah, as Danielle says, people willing to cut your hand off cause you bigger issues than entering your house, obviously. Yes. Yeah. It's funny how there are all these... people imagine extreme scenarios and use that as a justification for not doing something that the vast majority of the time is actually beneficial. And I was reminded of this recently. I remember hearing this when seatbelts became mandatory. One of the arguments against seatbelts was, what if you're in a car that crashes off the road and it goes into water and it sinks and you drown because you're trapped in the car because the seatbelt is on? So, okay, how many times has that happened in the history of the world? I'm sure it has happened. I absolutely guarantee that it has happened, but the number of times is probably a few in total versus however many hundreds of thousands of car crashes there are every year. Yes. All right. Yeah. Oh, Andy brought up an interesting point. This is really getting off topic here, but this is interesting. Schoolyard prank in 1980 was note on your back saying kick me. In 2020, it's using an Apple tag. Yeah, so AirTags, dropping an AirTag into someone's bag or into their pocket and then being able to track their location. Yeah. I've got a story in relation to that from the early 90s. Just wondering if I should tell it because, okay, I will tell it. A slightly sanitized version of it because I don't want to identify people. Okay, there was someone, and in fact, there is someone in the chat here today who was around at the time this was happening, but probably didn't know about this particular event. I don't want to say a whole lot more than that. But I'm trying to figure out how to say this without identifying people, given that there are people here who have actually known me for like 30 plus years in the chat. Okay, there was a couple, a guy and a girl, and the guy was and is technically very savvy. Someone that I used back at school, so that these were school classmates of mine. So this is back from high school days, and we were into electronics back then, and computers and those sorts of things. Oh, okay. Chip says, I think I knew about it. All right, so we used to make FM bugs and things. It was in the whole talking electronics era when people were making lots of little radio transmitters and things and sticking them in places to eavesdrop on conversations. And anyway, this couple broke up, and it was a very emotional, sort of difficult breakup. And the guy made an FM transmitter, which was it was basically just a beacon. So it wasn't an audio transmitter. It was just I was going to say transponder, but a transponder, you send it a signal and then it replies to you. All this would do was transmit a little beep, like every couple of seconds on a certain frequency. And he attached it to her car, to his ex-girlfriend's car. And he used that so that if he was in the vicinity of the car, he could pick up the beacon that was transmitting and he would know that her car was nearby. And he could tell if her car was parked in a car park. And this is one of those really bad situations that it goes so far over the line in terms of unacceptable behavior and stalking and all of those sorts of things. This was using technology for stalking back, when would this have been? It would have been about 1992, I think. Give or take, somewhere around that era. I don't remember the year exactly. Acrimonious, yes. So anyway, there was more around the story, and his justification for it was that he wanted to know when she was in this place so that he would not go there when she was there, because they both happened to, there was this particular place that they would frequently go. Yes, the RX3 days. It wasn't actually it wasn't that person though. I'm going to avoid using any names, but yes, it was RX3 days, but it wasn't that person. And so his justification for it. So anyway, what happened was she came to me and drove she drove to my place because she was washing her car and found it. And then she came over to my place because we were all mutual friends, like this was in this friendship group, and said, I found this thing in my car, what the hell is it? It was like stuck up underneath the bumper bar, and I had a look at it and it was pretty obvious what it was. It was a transmitter, and she ended up taking it to the police, I think. So she drove down to the police station and said, like, I found this thing attached to my car. And it didn't end up going anywhere. This is so far off topic. How did I end up talking about this? But anyway, so she ended up going, I don't think anything else came of it. If that sort of thing happened today, the person who put it there would probably be charged with stalking, and I don't know. I don't know the legal aspects of any of that sort of thing. I am not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. Yeah. So, yes. Okay, I'm backtracking, trying to think about how I got into this subject. I was talking about tracking people's locations using RFID implants. So this was an example of finding whether someone's car was in a certain area so that you could avoid that area. Anyway, and as Incognito 3 said, and honestly, they would probably deserve to get charged for that. Yes, that is a really bad thing to do. Yeah. All right. Squirrel tracking. Peter, yes. Squirrel tracking. We need tracking of squirrels. It's like, what I need is a neat way of being able to jump to a subroutine and like push a whole lot of values, push the stack off, push stuff onto the stack and then pop things back off the stack when I return, because I lose track. I go down this little forking path in the road, and then I think I'm going to come back to the original topic later once I've told this story, and then by the time I've told the story, I've got no idea what I was talking about in the first place. But this did all start with, yeah, Incognito. Isn't this what the chat is for? Squirrels are equivalent to an interrupt. That's right. The thing is that with interrupts, like with ISRs, the general idea is to do as little as possible and get out instantly and let the main routine continue. But my ISRs end up being epically long. Yes, Dodgy says, you're going to answer a question about dimming with Shelly Pro. I was indeed, and I will talk about Shelly, but I don't think it's quite time yet. Or maybe I should talk, something about dashboards and accessibility. That is the actual thing that I want to talk about. And so, now, all right, my own perspective on this. IQ makes your squirrel briefly freeze while the other squirrels are dealt with. Oh, NMI, yeah, non-maskable interrupt. That is a long time. Yeah, NMI. When I saw the NMI, has anyone mentioned that? What it actually stood for? So, Frank said NMI. And when I saw that, for a moment, I was thinking, NMI, I know that acronym. But it's been a long time, yeah. Non-maskable interrupt. That has been a very long time. Andrew said, I went to see Billy Connolly 2 years ago and he went off on tangents all the time. Then he paused and just laughed for like 2 minutes. We decided after the show that he was trying to remember his place. Possibly. I don't know. This is a tangent. I am not a comedian, but I am pretty sure that the skill of being a comedian is something that, it is a skill. It is something that people work at really, really hard. Years and years of practice to get their timing and their interaction with the audience, and comedians don't just stand up and freewheel their way through a set. They have little sections, they have bits, that are assembled into a set, and it is all very, very carefully choreographed and timed. So yeah, I don't know about Billy Connolly. Maybe his sets are more freewheeled, like he strings together a series of things and changes his course based on how the interaction is going with the audience. I don't know. Celtic Beast says staying on track is also a skill. I have no skill in that area. Dashboards and accessibility. Okay. Oh, Peter says he has Parkinson's. Are you talking about Billy Connolly? I assume so. All right, so dashboards. Dashboards more generally. Now, they... okay, what I would like to know is, of the people in the chat right now, what... Sorry, I just saw Michael's comment. You're new here, aren't you, Celtic? No, Celtic Beast has been around for a little while. Okay. Now, dashboards. It is years since I've set up a new dashboard system for my house, and I used to have touch screens around the house in a few different places. They were all homebrew. So this was back in the days when my whole house was basically run by a collection of PHP scripts. And so what I did was create a web interface which was using Ajax, so asynchronous JavaScript. Was it asynchronous JavaScript and XML? So that the web interface, or in fact on the intro to my videos, so if you watch my proper videos, the ones that are actually edited and not just live stream me making stuff up as I go, right in that first few seconds of the intro you can see a touchscreen on the wall, and that was mounted, which way? It was on that wall right there that you can't quite see, just around the corner next to those drawers, when that photo was taken. That was an old, what was that one? That would have been an old Android tablet, I think. And so what I had was basically Apache running on an Ubuntu machine, and Apache was serving up the web interface with some JavaScript. The JavaScript was being used to set the state of the different buttons and things. So what you could do is press an on button or an off button, or I can't remember which way around it went. Yeah, there were two buttons. One was on, one was off. And when you pressed one, instead of submitting the whole page, it would just use some asynchronous JavaScript to do a call back to the web server to a service, which was also a PHP script, which would then see which button you had touched, and then it would toggle lights on and off and things like that. Anyway, terrible description. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining what it was. Yes. So, Michael said, my whole house is operating by a series of PHP, Perl, and Python scripts communicating with XML. Yeah. That description seems to cover my house as well. I didn't have any Python. I did have some Perl. I had a combination of PHP and Perl. And what else? I can't remember. It was basically LAMP stack stuff. So there was PHP and MySQL and all that sort of thing. All right, so what I had then was a web interface, and the way I set it up was that I created a config file so I could define the different user interface elements and not change any of the actual code. The config file would specify a list of the objects to display on the screen and the type of input. I had a couple of different types, so I could have on and off buttons, or I could have up, stop, down for controlling blinds, for example. And so what it would do is, and also there was an output method mapping. So some things were controlled using like a REST interface, so like an HTTP connection to something, and then post some values. and some were done using MQTT. It was a whole mishmash. So what I had was a config file that defined the user interface, like the label of the user interface object, the buttons, and then when a button was pressed, what did that map to? Like, was it a publication to MQTT, or was it an HTTP call to an endpoint on some device like in the switchboard? And that ran my house basically for, I'm trying to think of how long. It was, at a guess, it might have been 5 years, something like that. It was quite a long time. And eventually I replaced all of that with OpenHAB, and then used the... So what I had to do in order to make that work was create different web interfaces, so essentially like different web pages for different scenarios. So I had one that was optimized for the tablet that was on the wall, that way, and I had another one that was optimized for a phone. There were a couple of different types of phones, so I ended up with different versions to make things scale in the right way and display the right sort of things. So it wasn't, yeah. Anyway, it was crude, it worked. Then I switched to OpenHAB, and one of the main reasons I actually switched to OpenHAB was for the app. And the app was what gave me the user interface. And it was more was it more responsive? No, I think it was just less work for me, because I didn't have to keep maintaining this thing. I could just configure different, I think the configuration might have ended up being a little, I was going to say easier, but no. Configuring OpenHAB is not easy. All right. So, Home Assistant, NodeRed. Okay, so what I am using right now, as you were all chatting among yourselves, is, no, what did I do with my phone? So what I have right now is NodeRed with the NodeRed Dashboard and MQTT, obviously, because that's the backbone for everything. And then I have the NodeRed Dashboard app on my phone. If I wait for it to open, you can see, I mean, I've shown this before. In fact, I showed it in the video. Whoop, which side? That way. I can't see it. I'm watching the screen to see what I'm touching. Come on. Yep, so I can open that area and then turn that thing on or off, which isn't actually connected. That is the Shelly Pro 4PM object that that I set up just for the test in the video. But with that, I can use my phone to control stuff. Yes. But the NodeRed Dashboard is not great. It is really handy. It does have a fair bit of flexibility, because you've got some options in terms of the way the grid is set up and being able to group things. So if you want to put a simple dashboard in front of NodeRed and not have to bring in any other dependencies, like you don't want to have to run Home Assistant or OpenHAB or whatever else, then the NodeRed Dashboard is a good solution. It's a moderate, I'm going to describe it as lightweight, I suppose, because you don't need those other dependencies. And if you already have NodeRed in your system, which many people do, so a lot of people have NodeRed hanging off the side. They might have something else as the core of their system, like OpenHAB or Home Assistant, but then they'll have NodeRed for other things, which might be dealing with sensor data or whatever. So a lot of people have NodeRed somewhere in their system, even if it isn't the core of the system. It's not the thing that's running everything else. And so if you have NodeRed, in my case, NodeRed is the core of my system. All of the logic runs through it. And so using the NodeRed Dashboard is a relatively small increment in terms of complexity. it's adding an extra view onto NodeRed to make it palatable, so that when you pull something up on your phone like this, it comes up with a nice user interface and you can click on things and you're not interacting with the normal NodeRed, you know, the full web UI. All right. Now everybody's talking about beer, which I think indicates that I have lost everybody's attention. Carlos said, do you have to pay for a license when using NodeRed? No. NodeRed is open source and free for use. And those two things are not necessarily the same, but I don't want to chase licensing squirrels right now. The short answer is no. It's free. You can use it as much as you like and for whatever you like. And there are no license fees to pay. Excuse me a minute. While you're talking about beer, I'm going to take a drink from my tasty beverage, non-beer. All right. Scott says, free-flowing beer makes the stream more fun. Yeah, if I liked beer, maybe it would. Oh, Andrew says, I really need to finish getting NodeRed deployed. NodeRed is really simple. It's one of those things that it's got a very low barrier to getting it running. The important thing is just to have somewhere to run it that is going to be up 24/7. So depending on what your infrastructure is like, you can run it on a remote system if you want to, but I try to keep everything local, so I'm not dependent on my internet connection for things to work. And what I've become a really big fan of, maybe this will bite me at some point, but I am a really big fan now of using something like a NAS as the NAS combined with Docker as the platform for running a lot of these things. Yeah, Andrew, I'm sure you do. Andrew says, I have servers in my garage. Yes. For those who know Andrew, this is not in any way surprising. But the thing is, do you want to be running like a quad Xeon machine in a rack in your garage in order to run NodeRed? I don't think so. So what you need is some platform that is going to be reasonably economical to run. Basically, it needs to be fast enough. It needs to be 24/7 available. So, you know, something that's reliable, and it needs to, there was a third thing in my, in my mind. Michael says my NodeRed lives in Los Angeles, and you do not. So you can run it, yeah, you can run it remotely. You can install it on a VM on, you know, any cloud hosting provider or whatever, or yeah, $7 per month per virtual private server. Exactly. And then you've got what should be a very reliable system, because the hosting provider will provide you a VPS, which is running on their redundant hardware, etc. They take care of all of that. But if your internet connection goes down, you can no longer get to your NodeRed installation. So that's just why I do everything locally. Now, yeah, so as I said, I've become a fan of running this sort of stuff on a NAS. So I use a Synology NAS with Docker, and partly because I need a NAS anyway. So what happened was I got the NAS just because I needed it for storage purposes. And when I got it, that was all I had in mind. I wasn't thinking of doing anything else. And then I was playing around in DSM, which is, you know, Disk Station Manager. That's the operating system for Synology NASs. And I saw, I can run Docker on this. Oh, I can bring up containers. And I realized that the things I had running on miscellaneous Raspberry Pis around the place, on SD cards that could fail at any time if they're written to too frequently, those sorts of things, I could just stick them in Docker on the NAS, which I have to have running 24/7 anyway because I need it for the file storage. And it's like you get the reliable platform for free because you're already running it. So if you have a NAS running in your house, typically it'll have a bunch of disks in it. It'll be running RAID with, so you can have a disk fail and the machine will keep right on going. You pull the disk out, you put a new one in, it rebuilds the array, and you're good. So if you have a NAS in your house and it can run Docker, that is a good place to run all of these sorts of things. And then I ended up yeah, turning off a couple of random Raspberry Pis that I had around the place and using them for other things. All right, so yeah, as Chris makes a very important point. This is something that a lot of people don't think about. My main concern is rebuild time. Redundancy is good, but more expensive. So rebuild time is the grace period between failure and the missus accepting we don't live in caves anymore. Yes. So, yeah, Celtic Beast says, I was hinting at John's video on the topic. Yes, I have done an entire video about this. One video? Maybe multiple videos. I don't even remember. So, grace period. A lot of people underestimate how long it takes to do things when you're moving data around. Now, this is a total tangent. I'm going to mention it because I just want to mention it before it disappears off the thing. Tiago said, what software do you use to design PCBs? Any indication of a free one? I currently use Eagle combined with Fusion 360. A free one, KiCad. Okay, that's the answer. If you're looking for an open source or free package for software, for PCB design, I highly recommend KiCad. It's just, that's not what I happen to use personally for historical reasons. So back on the subject. Rebuild times, yes, Andrew says rebuild times is also why I have 2 OpenWRT routers. If an upgrade fails, I just switch to the other one. Yep. So if that is something that is kind of in my mind, I would like to have a second Synology NAS and have them replicating between them so that I could fail over between the two. But they're expensive. By the time you get the NAS and then populate it, it's thousands of dollars. So the way I deal with that is I have backups of things like the NodeRed configuration. I've got a complete export of my entire NodeRed setup, and I've got that on a different computer. So worst case scenario, what I can do is bring up a Raspberry Pi, install NodeRed, and restore the configuration. Now what I really should do, and now that we're talking about this, I think I'll add this to my to-do list. What I really should do is set up Docker on some other small PC. I have some Nano ITX motherboards that I used to use with pfSense as firewalls, and they are moderately grunty little PCs. Like, motherboard is this big, and they're pretty decent little machines. So what I should do is bring up one of those, configure Docker on it, and set it up so that all of my configuration is mirrored across onto it. So even if my NAS dies, say something catastrophic happens, not just, okay, imagine this, not just a hard drive failure, in which case it can keep working until you replace the disk or another disk fails, but say the power supply in it just fried. Like right now, there was a bang from out there, power supply is dead, NAS is dead, I can't control the house. It is Sunday in Melbourne during lockdown. What can I do? The nice solution would be if I could drive down the road to Officeworks or somewhere, buy a new NAS, bring it home, slot all the disks in, turn it on, and bang, we're back up in action and we're running. But I couldn't get one. Like, if I needed another NAS, the same model, it could take me a week, because I'd probably have to order it. I have to wait for it to arrive. Could I live in this house with no control over anything for a week? None of the light switches working, none of the lights working? No. I could not. Celtic Beast says stolen NAS, yes. Yes, that's a problem as well. If someone stole the NAS, I'd be in trouble. Yeah, so having some kind of a system that allows me to bring up an equivalent, not necessarily identical. I'd lose all of the storage because I can't afford another, how many disks are in it? Eight 8 terabyte disks. That's expensive. So, and of course you need a device that is capable of connecting 8 disks. But if I can bring up the critical services like NodeRed, etc., then the house could continue working. MQTT, obviously. And the other thing is that I would need to do it in a way that it comes up on the same IP address. So I'd need to have it adopt the IP address. Oh, Scott says, I back up my VMs on a second server. Downtime if the machine explodes is about 10 minutes. Yeah, that's nice. So if you do everything in VMs and you have those VMs... Celtic Beast says, what's John's fascination with Officeworks? My fascination with it is that it is a few kilometers from me, and they typically have IT-ish related stuff in stock that I can walk in and buy. This is something that through my... all sorts of squirrels just ran through my brain. I could talk about that, but I do want to get back to these other subjects. There is such a big change that we're going through at the moment with the lack of ability to simply go and buy stuff when you need it. Ordering takes time, particularly here in Australia. So in the US, you have things like Amazon Prime where you can get things same day or next day. That doesn't really happen here. If I want something and I need to order it, I have to be prepared, and I'm willing to pay for like super expensive express shipping like DHL or FedEx or something, and pay $80 for shipping. I might be able to get something in like 5 days. So, but apart from that, I've got to be resigned to the fact that if I order something, it might take a couple of weeks, a few weeks, something like that. I can't just walk into a shop and buy something. So my fascination with Officeworks is that it is one of the decreasing number of places where I can be here on a Sunday afternoon and think, I need a USB hub. And I can get in the car and drive down there, buy it, and be back here 20 minutes later with a USB hub. That is increasingly rare. Scott says there are 2 Dell T420s up and running here and 2 spares. Total machine failure is covered. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So we are now way off the original dashboard subject. Incognito 3 said, does your NAS back up to off-site? Partly it does. So I'll give a very brief summary. Because I switch around between machines, I know that a lot of people, this seems to be pretty common in the tech world, have one primary machine, which is a laptop. It goes everywhere with them and it has everything on it. So basically their life is in that one device and they don't go anywhere without it, and everything they do is on that one machine. That's not at all the way I work. I tend to have different computers for different purposes, and they're not necessarily high-end computers. So if you've got one machine, then you can justify buying a really good laptop and replace it like every 2 years or something, and be pretty much up to date because that's the only machine. Whereas I have the desktop that I use here, which you fine folks bought for me. Thank you very much. I have my laptop because I work in other places. I have another computer over here which is running the pick and place machine. And so I tend to need access to the same files in many places. So what happened? Oh, and also there is a computer at Chris's house, which is actually, yes, there is a computer at Chris's house that, sorry, it's just making me think of some things I'm trying to avoid thinking about. That was Nick's old computer, which I have used intermittently over the last few years since Nick died. And so Nick's computer is logged into my Dropbox account and my files synchronize onto that as well. So what I have is on all of my computers, basically nothing happens outside of Dropbox. I treat the Dropbox directory as if it is my home directory. Everything is in it. Then I have a separate folder which is outside of it, which is just called unsynced. And that's where I just have local copies of things. Like if I download like an Ubuntu ISO or something, I stick it in the unsynced folder and I know that that's just a local copy because it might be a couple of gig and I just don't want it in Dropbox. And so the result is that I can walk up to any of my computers, open it, and all of my files are there exactly as I left them on whatever computer I was using last. And they're always in sync. So the exception is very large files, things like video files that I'm editing, and that's the sort of stuff that the NAS is used for. And the NAS is backed up to other USB disks, external USB disks, which are plugged into a different computer. And then there is a script that rsyncs off the NAS onto those external disks. So basically what it means is that, oh, and I also have a Dropbox login on a VM in at Linode. In fact, I've got two Linodes, which have my Dropbox directory checked out on them. Synchronized. So my all of the files that I care about at any one point in time are usually in about 6 or 7 different computers, replicated pretty much in real time and distributed across 4 physical locations. And by physical location I mean like kilometers or continents apart, not just, you know, different places in the same house. All right. Yep. Celtic Beast had a good suggestion, which is a NAS at someone else's house. Scott says bypass Dropbox and rsync directly to Linode. Yeah, but that makes things... Yeah, I'm using Dropbox for version control as well. So there are many times that I've deleted a file and then I just go back in time and go, undelete. Yeah, it also means running it. So that rsync has to be done... I'm trying to resist the urge to go down this path because I have done that in the past. And there's a... So rsync is primarily a unidirectional sync protocol. Well, the way the protocol works, it's unidirectional, but there are other things like Unison, which I've used in the past, which is multi-way. And with Unison, what you can do is have 2 directories and you make a change at either end and that change is then pushed across, it's reflected. And yeah, I used to use Unison for that reason. Anyway, I've ended up just with Dropbox, and Dropbox runs on my phone as well. So part of it is that I do that So Scott says, do version control locally and rsync the version control data store. Yes. Apart from using Dropbox, almost everything in my home directory is in Git. So I version stuff like crazy. But one of the things I use it for is everything on my phone is also kept in Dropbox, including all the photos I take. So when I take a photo, it immediately uploads to Dropbox and then it's on my computers, etc. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much more time talking about that, because what I want are suggestions. I would like to know from you what things I should go and look at in the next, over the course of the next week. If I'm wanting to set up a dashboard, what things should I use? Now, if your system is based on a specific core, like OpenHAB or Home Assistant, it makes sense, obviously, to use a dashboard solution that is based on that core. And I'm not using either of those things, but I am open to it. I would, if there was, if there was a really compelling user interface that was dependent on OpenHAB 3 or Home Assistant or some, I keep talking about those two because those are really the dominant ones. IO Broker does look nifty. Okay, I should take some notes. Maybe old school, you know, post-it note style. All right, so hit me. I want some suggestions. IO Broker. IO Broker. I want some things that I can look up and check out a previous post on IO Broker. Okay, Michael Sullivan suggested that. I'm going to take a note of that. Thanks, Michael. Oh, when you say previous post, do you mean right here in the chat? Yes. I don't know. I might have missed something further back up in the chat. All right. Squirrels all the way down. Yes. Oh, Michael Sullivan says yes, it was further back in the chat. All right. I'm going to look up IO Broker. I'm really tempted to just start doing this thing live. Let's see. IO Broker. Let's see what Google can tell me about IO Broker. Open source free software for bringing smart home systems together. Open source automation platform. All right, fog computing. People are just making up terms now. So this is the iobroker.net site. IO Broker, automate your life, open source automation platform. And it's an IoT platform for fog computing when the cloud is not enough. Ability to manage your IoT system as one intelligent, robust project. All right, runs on a bunch of stuff. Looks interesting. Screenshots. Oh, dashboard screenshots. Cool. All right, come on. Go to the next one. Oh, it's like a, it looks kind of like an industrial automation type interface. Let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, camera integration. Cameras being integrated into it is really nice. I like that. That's actually something that I could really do with, and that is that would be a reason. Oh, and this sort of view where you have an overview of the house and you can see temperature and humidity in each of the rooms. That is the sort of thing that I want to do. I want to be able to look at an overall map of the house and see, oh, it's hot in that room or cold in that room and things, and get a better idea of what's going on with the heating system. So yeah, that would be a cool sort of thing. Cookies go away. HAS.io on Home Assistant. Oh, Chris says, I would like gesture control, like Leap. Interesting. Andrew says, just hack something up from scratch with Blazor. Blazor. I am not familiar with Blazor either. So, Blazor. None of you had better send me to any URLs that I should not be looking at. Blazor. Build client web apps. Yeah, you could, but that looks like a whole lot of learning curve to me. That's a development platform for creating custom apps. What I would prefer to do is look for, while I'm here on Hasio, Home Assistant. Yeah, and there's the OpenHAB dashboard. There will be a few options. HAB panel. So HAB panel I have had working in the past. Let's go to OpenHAB, HAB panel, and just look at some pretty pictures. Images, because I want to see what people have done. All right. Michael says Blazor is a .NET framework. We're tinkering with it at work. Interesting. So let's just have a look at images on here as well. Go straight for the images. Now, okay, so the scenario that kicked all of this off in the first place is a situation. So imagine a situation, and I'm sure this is pretty common. There are many people who are physically disabled who could benefit from home automation technology, but don't necessarily, they're not technically inclined themselves, or they just don't have anything set up. So there are things they could benefit from, but they're not for whatever reason. So if you were in that sort of situation and you wanted to set up a system to be able to control the things around you, what's the entry point? Where do you begin? And I think really the first thing that you'd need to think about is what is going to be the core of the system. I'm avoiding using the word hub, and I think the concept of the core is more important. It's like the basic platform that other things are dependent on. And typically what would happen is that you would pick something like Home Assistant or OpenHAB or whatever, and then build other things around that and attach them to it. So you end up kind of buying into a particular ecosystem and then using things that are compatible with that ecosystem. And that extends to the dashboard. So the choice of the technology to create the dashboard kind of depends on what the core of the system is. What is it that you're basing everything on? Yeah, OpenHAB 3 can be really simple. Sometimes too many graphics is too much. Yes, that's true. Absolutely. So if we're thinking about this from the point of view of we want to provide a nice user interface for someone who is, they may be very technical or they may not be technical at all. It's a matter of forget the technology. The technology doesn't matter so much because for me, I do this sort of stuff just because I love playing with it. But that's not the majority of people. And the fact that you're watching this live stream probably means that you just love playing with this stuff. And you would be doing it anyway. You're not doing it because you have to. You're doing it because you want to. But for many people who can benefit from it, they just want to get something done. They don't want to be messing around with doing updates to the software or trying to write scripts to integrate things. They want it to be as close to plug and play as possible. So where was I going with that thought? I don't know. Michael Sullivan says IO Broker supports HAB Panel, Lovelace, and 3 of its own custom dashboard systems. Automations can be done in NodeRed, Blockly, and Java. It has the ability to detect different screen resolutions. That sounds really nice. So it sounds very flexible. Just based on what I quickly saw, where was it? Blazor? No, not there. I'm going to go back to the IO Broker. thing again here. It looks like to me it looks kind of like a meta project, just based on the very small thing I've seen here that ties into other things. That's a lot of icons to load. It's a lot of HTTP calls. Yeah, so a meta project that links into other things. And let's have a look at IO Broker. Just going to go to IO Broker image. Oh, come on. IO Broker. I want to just do a search and then an image search. So some examples of things in IO Broker. And we had screenshots earlier as well. Dash UI. Little temperature charts, which is cool. A control panel. Oh yeah, that really does look like, yeah, that is very much like looking at OpenHAB. Yeah. It's the ability to manage groups as a single command that makes life easier. Andrew says, I'm running into that with my vaguely ex in-laws. They have an iOS app for managing their home AV stuff, and they need an AV guy to make changes to it. Yeah, that's yeah. All I can say is yes. So many people that work in tech do not spend enough time. Okay, there's another squirrel to chase. Many, many years ago, I very briefly went down a rabbit hole of user testing for web interfaces. And it was shocking. So the very brief squirrel on this one is, you imagine you're designing a website. So we're not talking about a user interface. Well, we're not talking about a user interface in the context of control, like a home automation system here. We're talking about a web page with information in it. And you just want to convey that information to people. And they need to be able to go around, dig down into the structure of it to find the information they want. If you have put a whole lot of time into creating a website and structuring it, and you think that you've structured it perfectly, and you get someone who has never seen it before, and you go and sit off in the corner somewhere, and they sit at the computer, and you say to them, okay, I need you to find a particular product on this website. And you don't give them any hints, you just let them do it. It is amazing how the way they interact with something will be different to the way you expect. And the only way that you can find out for sure how people are going to interact with something is to just let them do it and see what happens. And so, yeah, and sometimes you can have blindness to things. Even if you are, you might be technically very competent. There was actually an example of this a couple of days ago where my wife, who is very technically competent, was trying to, what was the scenario? I'm trying to remember. It was basically a situation where she was looking at a web interface, and it was for, yeah, I'm not going to talk about what it was in relation to, but it was like an online transaction thing. And what she needed to do to make this thing work was a huge word, like text link, right in the middle of the screen. And she was looking around going, I can't do this. Like, where is the thing? And it's like, I pointed at the middle of the screen. Click that. And it was like this big thing saying, click here to do this. And sometimes the way you interact with things, it doesn't matter how obvious you make things, this sort of situation will always come up. And and it's unpredictable. Creating things that other people interact with is a really difficult job. People who do user interface design, like user experience design, that sort of thing, they have a really tough job, and it takes a lot of knowledge and skill to be able to do it well. So I have so much respect for people that build user interfaces and make them intuitive and present just the information that's required when it's required without overwhelming. Anyway, that was a little tangent. It was basically just me wanting to give some respect to people who are often not given the respect they deserve. Andrew said, the number of times I've missed seeing things because they were highlighted. Yes, that was actually the scenario. That was the situation here on this page I was just talking about. The thing that needed to be clicked on was, it was like highlighted somehow. And it was the only highlighted thing on the page. And it kind of made it invisible. It's like a selective blindness thing. Sophie the cat asked, is there a way to cleanly mount a touchscreen onto my plaster wall and connect a Raspberry Pi to it while having it decently flush on the wall? Ooh. Now, connecting a Raspberry Pi to it. The thing is that having it reasonably flush with the wall is the problem. And now this is actually a whole subtopic, is what hardware do you run these touch interfaces on? We could get into that a lot. But the way, my personal preference, the way I like to do that is to take the lazy way and use a cheap tablet. Something like an Android tablet that you can buy for $100. Run power to it hopefully in an inconspicuous way. Either open the back case and drill a hole in it and run a power cable through to it, like a USB charger cable or something through the wall. Now, this is the thing. If you want to build your own system, with like a touchscreen and a Raspberry Pi, if you look at, in fact, my friend Chris has one of these sitting up on the shelf just near his computer. He has one of those Raspberry Pi, I think it's like a 7-inch touchscreen. Is it a touchscreen? I can't remember if it's a touchscreen or not. Anyway, it's like a 7-inch screen in an enclosure with a Raspberry Pi on the back of it. And because it's got the Pi, the whole thing ends up being quite deep. From the front of the screen to the back of the enclosure. I mean, I'm guessing here. I'm working from memory. Where you'd think I would have a ruler more easily accessible. It's probably 50 millimeters deep, which is huge. And tablets are designed to be really, really thin. Sometimes they have a camera bulge on the back, which sucks. But it's one of those things where for $100, you can buy a tablet with a touch screen and Wi-Fi in it that will be like 7 millimeters thick or 9 millimeters thick. If you can get charging power to it and attach it to the wall, it actually makes a really, really good platform. Now, the thing is that you can't necessarily, unless you do Android development, you can't necessarily run things on it the way you would want to. But if you're using a dashboard system that provides an Android app, then you can just install the app on the device and full screen it, and it looks good, interacts well. It's got built-in battery backup, which is sometimes useful. So yeah, anyway, I have done things in the past where I've made panels and it always ends up being a bodge compared to what a big company can do with building, say, a 7-inch or a 10-inch tablet that you can then just stick on the wall. It is really, really hard to build something that comes even anywhere close to the form factor that they can achieve. And the amount of time and money that you would spend in making it is way more than if you just go out and get something like a tablet. Anyway, that's That's an interesting one, Chris. Chris says, I had a flush tablet in a plaster wall and people kept taking photos of the inside of the wall. Yeah, so using the thing to activate the camera, and the camera is on the back of the tablet inside the wall. Gil says, I used a Samsung Galaxy Tab A7 and printed a frame. Looked pretty good and flat. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, this is an interesting one. So Andrew suggested go to Thingiverse and search for thing 20. I'm not going to read out the number. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste that and stick it into Thingiverse right now and bring it up. So it's a flush wall mount for an RPi with a 7-inch screen. Interesting. Thingiverse. I'm going to bring this up in a moment. Wall mount. Here we go. Andrew, thanks for this suggestion. Maybe this will help Sophie the cat. I think this is probably a mount for the same screen as Chris has. I wonder how thick it ends up being once it's mounted on the wall. I don't think it'll be all that flush mount. Zooming in. Yeah, there are many projects for wall mounting these sorts of things. 1, 2, 3. It's got numbers in the parts so that you can see the order. Is that the order to us? No. Oh, they're options, maybe. Variations? I don't know. Yeah, so maybe that's an option, is 3D printing something like that. Poke a hole in the wall. Now, Scott Miller says poke a hole in the wall. So the, oh, cool, okay. That reminds me. Now, early in this live stream, I was talking about the project that my friend Andy was working on many years ago in the house with no light switches. So that was the mandate that was dictated by the homeowner. And one of the things that they did was put touch screens in all the walls of the house. But this is the thing. This was done, I don't know if Andy is still in the house cleaning mode. Yes, okay, this is worth talking about. So what I was just about to mention is this house that Andy worked in, so this would be the one that had 22 touch screens. This was done, Andy, you can tell me what year this was, but it was a long time ago. Was this 15 years ago? Something in that ballpark? And this was in the days before the iPad. I think it was before the iPad came out. So it was like in the days before tablets. And back in those days, if you wanted a touchscreen, that was a super exotic thing. Touchscreens were just not a thing. And so what they ended up doing was cutting huge holes in the walls, like building a box into the wall and putting a computer monitor inside the wall with a touchscreen overlay on the top of it. So not integrated. So you've got a computer screen, and then you get a transparent thing, which is the touch overlay that just sits in front of the computer screen. And then you've got to calibrate the position. So when something is displayed, like a user interface element is displayed on the screen, you have to calibrate the touch surface so that when you touch it, it knows that you are touching that particular button. 2000 to 2008. Thanks, Andy. So that's the era that this was being done. Pre-iPad, tablet sort of era. And so in this particular house, there were these huge assemblies that would go into the wall. They were really deep, big structures with mains power cables running down from the ceiling space to the monitor. And then there would be a video. I can't remember how this was done. I did see inside the ceiling space, like I crawled. When I say crawled, the ceiling space, you did not crawl, you walked. And in the ceiling space, I think there were computers sitting up inside the ceiling space, and then there was a video cable that went from the computer. It was like a PC inside the ceiling with the cable going down to the touchscreen that was mounted in the wall. And then the touchscreen overlay was linked by, I think it was like a serial interface or something, going back like RS-232, going back to the computer with a driver that would read the serial data. Touchscreen in the wall, Linux in the roof. Yep, thanks Andy. And as Andy said in his comment earlier, first world problems. When your home had 22 touchscreens and the cleaners don't realize that cleaning them changes everything. Next software version, house cleaning mode. Yeah. Peter says, is this sausage software dude? Yes, it is. And so, yes, touchscreen. Cleaner walks up to it with the rag and the spray and wipe, and then all of a sudden the like the big cantilever door next to the swimming pool starts to open and the lights go crazy. Yes. What are we talking about? We're talking about touchscreens. All right. I think I need to pause for a drink. So, platforms. We have been talking about platforms to run them on. Now, the other thing that I like about things like a tablet, say an Android tablet, is that in a situation where you do have to make it portable, it is ideal. Because what you can do is use a mount to put it on, for example, a wheelchair. It can be powered. So modern wheelchairs, and I'm talking about electric wheelchairs here or power chairs, it's really common to have things like mobile phones on them. And so they typically have USB ports on the wheelchair, and you can plug in, so you can plug your phone into the chair and it's just charged. Chairs have huge battery packs in them. They will, it'll run the phone till the end of time. That's not a problem. So something like a 7-inch, so moderately small, but big enough Android tablet attached to a wheelchair with the power coming from the chair means it's going to be always charged. If the chair is turned off, it's got a built-in battery, and tablets will typically run off their battery for many hours. Many hours. So you can still use it even if the chair is turned off. And they have Wi-Fi, so you can connect to your home network, and you can be portable with it. You can move around, not be constrained by your physical location, and still use the user interface, use the touchscreen to do things. Yep, Mr. Fixit says, I was so happy when tablets came out. Oh, Scott says, my new car has no USB ports. I am annoyed. Yeah, that is odd. It is quite normal for cars to have USB ports these days. So I think in the situation where you have, for example, you have hand mobility, but are using a wheelchair, my go-to for that would be an Android tablet mounted on the chair with power coming from the chair so that it's continuously recharged, Wi-Fi, and running either an app or a full screen, like a browser, basically as a web interface to whatever the dashboard is. So we still need to talk about dashboard technologies. Oh, Scott says, my new car is a 2007 Trailblazer. Okay, that's new. If you've just bought it, it's new. Oh, I thought I'm hit. Mute does not work. Why didn't mute work? I don't know. Sorry if I just hurt your ears. Oh, cool. Getting back to the subject. Let's chase that squirrel. Back to the original squirrel. Jarl says, another dashboard is Tileboard. Runs on Home Assistant. Very customizable, but configures all JavaScript. Not very beginner friendly. Goes well with kiosk browsers. Okay, cool. So, Tileboard. I'm writing a note about that one. Tileboard on Home Assistant. Okay, I'm going to pull that one up as well. So let's look for Tileboard Home Assistant and do this. Tileboard, new dashboard for Home Assistant. Let's be lazy and just look at pretty pictures. Alrighty. So in my kitchen, I have a Microsoft Surface tablet attached to the wall, and this looks, is that Windows? Like, this looks exactly like the tile interface on, I think it's running Windows 7. Yeah, Windows 7 on the Surface, the Microsoft Surface. Windows 8, yeah, maybe it is Windows 8. It looks exactly like that. And yes, so that, I'm actually going to have to pull it off the wall and probably throw it in the bin because it is, hang on, I am going to have to cough, which means I'm going to have to hit mute. Mute, I might have to do it through, that's better. That way I didn't damage your hearing. Yeah, so many years ago, I bought two Microsoft Surface tablets purely to attach them to the wall and use them as touch interfaces, just with a browser on them. So what I've been doing is running a full screen browser, loading a web interface, which shows a dashboard, but I haven't been using them for home automation. What I've been using them for is the web interface that links into the e-commerce system for Freetronics and Superhouse, and it displays things like a list of all of the orders that have been placed, whether they've been packed, whether they've been shipped, all of those sorts of things, so that when I'm walking through the kitchen, there is a display on the wall that reminds me of the things I need to do. And I bought them at the time because I think they were being discounted out at JB Hi-Fi or somewhere. So these tablets, I think they're quite big. I think they're about a 10-inch tablet, were really super cheap at the time. And I got two of them. Yes, I need a keyword or a visual signal. I've never actually installed any software on those tablets. So I bought them. They are absolutely factory original with just security updates applied. And a couple of years ago, the memory in them, so flash memory or whatever it is, whatever technology they use, became full to the point that Windows could no longer apply its own updates. And now they won't run with, the browser won't load. It's got an SSL issue, basically. And because I can't update them, I can't fix the SSL issue, which means that they're actually useless to me now. They are 100% factory, nothing ever installed on them. And just as time has gone on, they've got to the point where they're useless. And I know people are going to be saying, fully kiosk browser, yeah. So I know people are going to be saying, clear the cache and empty trash and all those sorts of things. And I've done all of that. Believe me, I don't want to have to throw these tablets out because they are perfectly good tablets. It's actually something that's really weird to me that I bought something, have never installed any software on it. The only thing that has ever run on those tablets is the browser that was installed when I bought it. And now it doesn't work anymore. So, yes. Peter says, from memory, TLS 1.2 isn't supported on Windows 8. Yeah. Oh, I've got to do this again. I need to requisition a new throat so that I don't have to do that. Daniel says, should be fine for home automation stuff still. NodeRed Dashboard is not HTTPS. but I can't even install anything on it. Yeah. Jackstech says you can reinstall Windows. I don't even know how to do that on those tablets. It's not like I can stick a CD-ROM, plug a CD-ROM drive into it. But anyway, it is worth, I think, me doing a bit of investigation and seeing if I can recover them, because I would like, if I can do a reinstallation and end up with just a basic Windows install on them, then I can run a full screen browser and they can keep just being simple status displays. Okay. Daniel says the browser should be fine for non-HTTPS sites. Yeah, but even so, it is exhibiting all of the symptoms that you would expect when a device has no storage space left. So 100% utilization on the root file system, and there's nothing that you can delete. Clearing caches, all that sort of stuff, rebooting, makes no difference. And the result is that even the browser just doesn't work properly. Like, it'll try to load things, and I think it tries to write out its cache files and fails. So the browser the windows are just constantly broken. It'll do things like you'll load a web page on it, and it'll load the basic page, but then it will fail to load all the media on the page. So it's useless in its current form. Anyway, what am I doing? I was off talk. Squirrel alert. What we were looking at was Tileboard for Home Assistant. I'm just scrolling down here looking for examples of things that are different. Like different user interfaces on Tileboard. So here is one. There's an example of it says my new wall-mounted dashboard running a Tileboard. So it's a tablet, looks like a typical Android tablet sort of arrangement attached to the wall. And yeah, that looks quite cool. This is another example of an interface. All right, now, a obvious typo is obvious. What was that, Peter? I don't know what you're referring to. I saw no typo. Everyone spells everything perfectly all the time. Peter says, I bought a cheap tablet, brought it home, it updated, and the updates killed the tablet and it became unusable. Oh, yeah. Jackstack says, if it's just a browser, whack on a minimal Linux install. I wish I could. I think one of the reasons that these particular tablets are a bit of a weird... I think the reason they were discontinued is that Microsoft went off into a little tangent for a while with some different processor choices, and then... So I think these ones might be ARM-based. So they were Microsoft Surface Pro... No, not Surface Pro, whatever it was, Surface tablet, and I think it had a CPU in it that was not particularly well supported. Oh, interesting point. BB says some cheap computers and tablets use eMMC storage and it wears out like flash chips. Chris says Surface RTs. I think there might be. Let's have a look. Microsoft Surface RT. In fact, there is one in the there's one in the back of the garage, because I also, yeah, that looks like it. In fact, I can grab one. I can even keep talking to you while I'm going, because I'm wearing this radio mic. I'm going to walk out into the back of the garage and grab one. Yes, I'm aware that we are still squirrel chasing. This one, oh, it's getting a bit dusty. So I had this one set up. It is covered in dust. It's disgusting. In fact, I'm not going to wipe it off before I show it to you, because I want you to see how bad it is. What have I got? Have I got my overhead camera? Yes, overhead camera. Oh, there's one of the radio mics. Oh. And side camera, There we go. And so this is the the old Microsoft Surface, and it's got, the funny thing is it's got no markings on the outside at all other than the Windows logo. So I've just got to grab a, I don't want to use that bit of cloth, I'll use this bit of cloth. I was very tempted to just wipe this off on my leg or something. Oh, it acts like a mirror. Maybe we can look up, where's the camera? There it is. There's the reflection of the camera that's currently looking straight down. So that's you looking at yourself. Oh, where am I moving it? There it is. Yeah, that's the camera on the drawer slide looking straight down on the workbench. It's amazingly anonymous. Apart from this very, very faint Microsoft logo, this is out of focus, isn't it? Is this, I don't know if this camera is in autofocus mode or not. Let's find out. This is probably going to make it wobble like crazy. But it's also very high above me, so I can't see what I'm doing. No. Oh, yeah, it is in autofocus mode. There we go. It just wasn't focusing. There is a complete lack of branding on this. There is this very faint Windows logo here, and nothing else anywhere. Is there a stand? Does this fold down? Oh, there we go. Surface. It is Windows RT Surface 32 gigabyte. I assume the 32 gigabytes is the storage, which is approximately half of bugger all. So yeah. Anyway, this is what I've got. This is the one that was in the back of the garage, and it was near my packing bench. So this was displaying list of orders to pack, and and as I pack each order, I could tap the touchscreen. There's a this is another squirrel. Squirrels chasing squirrels. The system that I've created for Freetronics and Superhouse gives me an interface where I can see a list of all of the orders that need to be packed, and by touching the order I can mark it as packed, which then sends an email to the customer saying your order has just been packed. So that was on this touchscreen while it was still working. And the one that is so I got two of those tablets, and the other one in the kitchen is just showing a list of the orders and their status. Andrew says, looks like the camera is focusing on the reflection. Awesome. Ooh, Celtic Bee says, try OpenRT Gitbook IO. That is, so there is hope for these tablets yet. What? Open Surface RT Gitbook. From Windows and make it easy. Whoa. Okay. This is really interesting. Thank you, Celtic Beast, for this this link. So this is it. Open Surface RT Home. It is. This project is about freeing the Microsoft Surface RT from Windows RT and making it ready to install Linux or any other operating system. That's exactly what I want. That would be so nice. Yes. Now this is an interesting squirrel to chase that is related to the original thing. Andrew said, for dashboards, I'm also tempted to think about MIDI type interfaces for tactile things. Knobs, buttons, and switches. Yes. Now, control panels. So, it's almost 12, nearly 2 hours. Okay. Tactile interfaces. That is a whole interesting subject that I would love to talk about. And it also ties into some of the things that's been done with the firmware for the the I/O project. Not quite sure what to call it. So anyway, related to OXRS, the Open Extensible Rack System, some of the firmware that Ben and Moyne have been working on for running the state monitor, so the firmware that reads inputs from light switches and other devices, it now supports rotary encoders, which means that you can build a physical interface with a rotary encoder in it. And I haven't played around with it yet myself. I really want to do that. But that seems really, really interesting because I like the idea. I've got a couple of projects. I've got one, I won't pull it out now. I've got a project in a box down, it's in the out of focus area, just down there. One of those boxes says the big red button. And that was a thing where I had a plastic enclosure with one of those big red e-stop buttons on it. And inside was an Arduino with a Wi-Fi shield. This was way, way back in the day, before ESP and all those sorts of things. And what happened was that you could hit the red button and it would do an HTTP post to a certain URL and activate things. So basically it was like a big red physical button, a physical interface to a web system. And I like playing around with things like that. Stephen says, I'm already making lunch. There is a project I have in mind. I just missed out. So I've talked a few times about making a physical end live stream button, and I do still want to do that. My original idea had been that I would resurrect that big red button project and then link it into OBS. So what I would do is have a plastic box with a big red emergency stop button on it, and when I slap the button, it'll send a command to OBS which tells it to end the live stream. It's like my emergency escape button at the end. And then I had the idea of, instead of just making it an e-stop button, why not, this is getting just slightly off topic, eBay, pedestrian crossing button. What I decided I wanted to get was, oh no, the ad is gone now because someone else won the auction. Anyway, what I was looking for was one of those Australian pedestrian crossing buttons. And hang on, I'm going to find a picture to show you what they look like. Pedestrian button. Yeah, oh, the PB5 pedestrian crossing button. So it's been used since 1984. So in Australia, it's also used in Singapore, Ireland, and in places in the US. So many of you will have seen this button. And this one. This is the classic PB5 pedestrian crossing button. And it's so it's got the big button thing in there. It's got the display here, and so that you can see, there are all sorts of interesting features about the design of this button. Anyway, it's it's visual feedback here. So for deaf people, they can see whether the state of the crossing thing. It has a tactile feedback on this, so you can see on the arrow there is a raised portion. So blind people can touch it and they can feel the arrow and feel which direction that button is for. So it can be, when the button is installed, it can be rotated. So for example, if it was on a post and it was for a crossing that goes to the left, the arrow would point to the left to indicate which way to go. And it has a clicker in it which tells you whether it's time to stop or go or quick and get off the crossing. So for people who are blind as well. So all sorts of interesting things about it. Anyway, one of these came up on eBay and for auction. Someone just in Bayswater, like right down the road from me, was selling it a couple of weeks ago, and I ummed and ahed over it. I didn't end up bidding for it. It sold for about 40 bucks, but I was very tempted. So what I was wanting to do was get one of these pedestrian crossing buttons and I haven't seen one of these for years. This is the old style button. I remember these. I had totally forgotten about this style of crossing button. So old-fashioned. So yeah, what I was wanting to do was get hold of one of these buttons and put an ESP inside it and a battery, like a LiPo, and basically make it a wireless button that I can use for doing things like press the button when it's time to walk away from the live stream. And there's a hand, looks like a child's hand. Give a perspective on size. Pedestrian crossing button. Someone, Cake Industries? Is that, I think those are cakes that have been made to look like, or is Cake Industries not that? I don't know. They're not real anyway. Of course, I could recreate one. I could do a combination of 3D printing and metalwork and stuff, and I could make, oh, here's an example of one that goes to the side. And I could make one that looks kind of like this, but I just wanted the real thing. Oh, here's one that's been modified, it looks like. So this has got an RGB LED in it and a touch plate instead of needing to be, touchless. So yeah, it'll be like a plate that senses when there's a hand near it. Look up Staples button. Oh, is that those are the little, like the flick buttons, the little ones that you can press to order things? Yeah, Staples button. Yes. Mr. Fix-It, no, I am not going to do that. If I do end up, Peter is calling out 2 minutes, 1 minute, lunchtime. If I do go out and get one, it is going to be legally. I'm not going to be taking one off off a post. But yeah, I would like to get one and retrofit it, Wi-Fi enable it. That would be very cool. Touchless. Okay. So, are there any last minute things? Have people got ideas for other, I'm just going to leave that on the screen because it looks kind of cool. Before I go, are there other ideas for things that I should look up? So I've got notes for myself. IO Broker, there's Blazor, there's Tileboard. What about for OpenHAB? What control panel sort of dashboard systems are people using? Just before I go, everybody call out. If you're using something, anything, doesn't matter what it is, it'd be interesting to hear. So if just put in HAB panel or, you know, Tileboard or whatever, stick it in the chat. I want to see. Peter, yes. Hacker my land, set up a cron to disco me. Dodgy says nothing yet. Yep. Lunch is ready right on time. Delane says trying to get rid of us. No. Lovelace on Hass.io. Okay, says BB. NodeRed in my cell phone. So Daniel, are you using the NodeRed Dashboard for that? Or, yeah, or some other thing? I'm actually interested to know of other solutions as well. So Chris says OpenHAB 3, not sitemap. Yep. Yep. Okay. Just the OpenHAB Android app. Yep. Oh, an Englishman in Brazil. That's a very generous offer, thank you. Action tiles on smart things, cool. Stephen Harrison, so that's one that hasn't been mentioned yet. Action tiles on smart, which is part of smart things. So action tiles is something else to look up. I think that this subject is I think this is a really interesting subject. I think this deserves a bit more digging into. I know that I've managed to talk for 2 hours and say absolutely nothing. on the subject. Peter Hummer set up a script to ban Scott from the interwebs. All right. So, Peter has now resorted to sending me personal messages saying to end the live stream. MQTT dash. Oh, okay. By Rutix Software. I've run out of space on my post-it note. MQTT dash by Rutix Software. Rutix Software. I think this is an interesting enough and an important enough subject that it is worth following up. Doji says, did we get to the question about dimming Shelley? No, we did not. So it's an interesting enough subject that I think it's worth continuing to discuss, maybe on Discord. So let's do that. If there are, once again, I'm very behind on Discord messages. I need to catch up on some things. But I am interested in looking at different options, seeing what people have done. I am open to the idea of installing either OpenHAB or Home Assistant just to be able to use one of the dashboard apps, like using something that ties into that. At the moment, I'm using the NodeRed Dashboard, but it is limited, and I am interested in things. In particular, I'm interested in things where I can have views like, as I was mentioning before, the map of the house, showing different things within their physical context. So like temperatures of different rooms, whether lights are on and off in different rooms, all of those sorts of things. And also embedded video. So I could pull in IP cameras and things and include those, because I've got cameras, but at the moment I've got them displayed on screens that are connected to the NVR. Like they're basically taking the feed off the NVR. I don't have the video feeds embedded in any kind of dashboard or control panel. Yeah. Peter Kirkhoff says you need to run Home Assistant. Yeah. Oh, Grant Diffie says a workmate set up. Oh, Grant, hey, good to see you here. A workmate set up a digital twin for his house. Yes. Peter is really trying to get rid of me. So Daniel says HTML and JavaScript probably wouldn't be hard to whip up. Yep. So that is what I was using on my old thing. So Grant says he was using it to do things like set the light to red when he or his wife was on a video call. Yeah. Cool. And as Scott says, Daniel Johnson, do it. Yes. Twin view. Twin view. Aaron says twin view. Is that a particular thing? Twin view. I am going to do a quick search for twin view, which sounds like a very general name. Digital twin software. Twin view. Move closer to net zero. All your property information in one place. It's a browser-based digital twin platform for the property sector, connecting building systems data to a 3D model viewed on a single dashboard. Yeah. Now there was a thing I did a long time ago where I did this using Second Life as well. I did a few conference talks way back. When would that have been? Back around early 2000s. I did some conference talks where I recreated like a physical environment inside the Second Life virtual environment. And what I did was create a door that the door in Second Life could be unlocked using my RFID implant in the physical world. So with an RFID scanner, I could scan the implant and the door in Second Life would unlock. So yeah, there are some interesting things you can do. I did a talk about that. Actually, I was talking to Cable Tie just this week about Perl, and that particular talk, I had, yeah, that talk. I did a talk at OzCon in Portland, Oregon, in the US, and I had Second Life up on the screen, and I was using my RFID implant to to unlock the virtual door in Second Life, and I had some Perl. So I implemented the same thing multiple ways in different languages. One of the languages that I implemented it in was Perl, and Larry Wall and I think his wife and his kids who were with him were sitting dead center front row in the audience while I was doing this talk. And when he saw how I was doing it in Perl, so I'd implemented a call. So basically I had a Perl script that was reading serial data coming from the RFID reader, and then it was doing a connection into the Second Life API, so that it could then unlock the door. And he made a comment about how something about, that's not normally the way you would do that in Perl. So of all the people that could have been sitting there that day, Larry Wall happened to be in the audience. The one time I showed Perl in the talk. Actually, no, I think I've shown Perl in talks a few times, but that was definitely an embarrassing moment. All right. Mr. Fix-It, Portland, Oregon. That's your home. Yes, I've been there a few times for OzCon. Yeah. Peter says, you still here? Yes. Aaron says, that animation on TwinView is reacting to live data stream from a university building. Oh, interesting. So this animation right here, is that what you're talking about with that, that little thing swirling around? Live data. Oh, talking about that, one thing in the bottom right, you can see the live data feed. View stream. Let's just say accept on that. Oh, interesting. So yeah, the bottom part was hidden by my face, but you can see data here. Now one thing that I thought was really cool was, I don't know if it's still there, but many years ago when I went to Google in Mountain View, which one was it? Yeah, in the main reception area in at Google, they had a big screen which was a picture of the globe, so the world, which was, I think it was slowly rotating, and it was showing the locations of search queries. So there was like a scrolling search queries. How long ago was this? In fact, I saw this on the same trip that I went to OzCon that year, because I went and did a talk at Google. And so it was the world. Oh, I said words that woke up the voice assistant on the tablet. So the globe was rotating slowly, and things like query volume was being shown as vertical lines coming out from the surface of the Earth at different points around the world. So you could basically just sit there. I don't know if it was live data or semi-live data or what it was, but it was a really interesting visualization, seeing, there's like this particular part of the world is, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, it's dark over there, and there are not very many people online, and over here you can see a lot of activity. So yeah, I really love visualizations like that. It's really cool. Andrew says, a few years ago I wrote some plumbing to feed real-time DNS queries for the .nz domains into I don't know how to pronounce that, Logstalgia. Yeah, and there's another one that I think I did quite a few years ago, which had a waterfall chart using data coming from IP tables and connections between things. Anyway, I like visualizations. I'm not very good at them, but I like seeing cool visualizations. Oh, yes, there was a company that used webcams on lava lamps to use for randomness for virtual machines. Yes, I remember seeing that one too. They had a whole wall of lava lamps, and there was a camera pointed at each lava lamp, and the motion inside the lava lamp is supposedly it's like as close to random as we can possibly get. So using the camera to read the position of the lava lamp was then a randomness feed, like seeding random stuff, which is important for crypto. All right. Okay. Not pseudo-random, but funky random. Okay. My phone just buzzed again. I suspect that that is possibly Peter. Oh, okay. No, it was just notifications that aren't relevant. All right. I really am going to go now because my, there we go. Back to here. Okay, I really am going to go. I am going to go and get some lunch. But thanks for hanging around and giving me ideas for a few different dashboard things. Some of them I haven't heard of, and that's the best thing, is when you learn new things. So I'm going to look up some of those. And if you want to talk about dashboards a bit more, please come along to Discord and and give me some ideas about other things that I can try. So, thank you very much. Oh, there is HomeDoc that I'm developing. Just sent you a screenshot. Ooh, thanks, Aaron. I assume that might have actually been even the notification that was on my phone a moment ago. So I assume that's in Discord or somewhere. Thank you very much. So thanks for coming along to yet another Sunday live stream. And so many things. I keep thinking of things that I want to talk about, but another time. Another time. It is time for lunch. Otherwise, Peter is going to jump on a ferry and come up to Victoria and come in here and pull the Ethernet cable out of my computer so that I will eat. Sunday is Saturday. Don't confuse me, Daniel. Thanks, BB. Thanks, Carla. Carlos. All right, I'm gonna go. I've got to press this button. I don't have the big red emergency exit button now, so I've got to find it. Where is it? End. Here we go. All right, bye.